And we have our kids are going to come and our youth are going to come put their mics up and get going and get ready. It is we have 2 skits that our kids are going to do and that tell some stories for us. Reminders about where we have been and where we are going. And so I invite you to hear what they have to say this morning.
Great books depend on a great opening to draw on the reader.
Charles Dickens wrote, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." He also wrote, "Marley was dead to begin with."
George Orwell's 1984 sets an uneasy tone with, "It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13.
Herman Melville launched his book about a great white whale with the simple sentence, "Call me Ishmael."
And the first line of the best-selling book of all time is, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth."
So what about you? What's the first line in your novel?
You might think you don't have one.
But you do. You have a story.
All of us have a story.
Comedian Groucho Marx famously said, "I must confess I was born at a very young age."
That's the first line of all our stories.
We entered this world with seemingly endless parade of blank pages stretching out ahead of us.
And from there, all of our stories began to diverge.
We went home to different houses.
In different towns.
We were an only child.
Or the oldest child.
We're the baby of the family.
Or somewhere in the middle.
We were raised by the parents who birthed us.
We're chosen by an adoptive family.
Or taken care by family members.
Before we could speak, we each began our story.
We didn't have much choice, but then our stories had a lot of passive verb forms.
We were carried.
We were fed.
We were picked up.
We were put down for a nap.
We were strapped in the car seats.
And we were nurtured.
But then slowly the verbs formed, changed, and active verbs crept in.
We rolled over.
We crawled.
We stood.
We walked.
We cried.
We cooed.
We smiled.
We laughed.
Chapter 1, Chapter 2. Without realizing it, our story was forming.
We spoke our first word and then never stopped talking.
We started school and we flourished and struggled.
We met people and made friends or stuck close to just one or two.
In biology, you may have learned that we are made of cells and organs and systems, but that's only part of the truth.
We are made from stories, you and I.
Who we are today is the direct result of the preceding chapters in our books of life.
It's not a perfect metaphor.
We are not novels.
We are not works of fiction.
We are biographies, but we are incomplete ones.
We have little to no control over the characters in our story.
Every day, we expect and need others to act in a certain way.
And they can or just simply won't.
The crush of who won't acknowledge our existence.
The teacher who won't give extra credit.
The parent who won't show up.
The loved one who passed away.
The friend who betrayed us.
There have and always will be unlikable characters in the darkest chapters in your story.
But it's okay. All the best stories have them.
Every story has conflict.
Every story has moments where the reader reads with the breath held, turning the page gingerly because the outcome is uncertain.
And every story has a moment like today.
Graduations, turning points, celebrations.
Literally the end of one chapter and the start of another.
Comedy and drama, lighthearted celebration, and closing note thoughts all weave together in our stories.
The question of the moment is this: who is writing your story?
You might think that's your job.
You probably think you're the main protagonist.
But you aren't either of those things.
Did you get that?
The story you call yours isn't really about you.
And you definitely shouldn't be the author.
You can try. Most of us have tried it at some point.
But we don't do it very well.
It's hard to pin the right present when we can't flip ahead with any accuracy.
And we can't even look back on it very well. We flip back and the pages are fuzzy and unclear.
Some chapters are so seriously clouded by emotion, both good and bad, that our recollections are very untrustworthy.
So what's the right solution? Simple.
Let God write your story.
Here's the thing about God. He doesn't need us.
But he wants us.
And that's so much better.
He loves us.
And all that's better still.
He is writing us into his story.
And that's just incredibly wonderful.
In Proverbs it says, "The mind of a man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps."
God wants us to write you into an epic story that he has been writing throughout history of the whole human race.
And often, it's the roughest things in life that God uses to mold and make us into his image.
That is part of the mystery of his love.
We celebrate with you today.
And there will be many more things to celebrate in your future.
college degrees, weddings, careers, babies.
You can't write those things.
Mother Teresa said, I am a little pencil in God's hand. He does the thinking, he does the writing, he does everything, and sometimes it is really hard because it is a broken pencil and he has to sharpen it a little more.
Embracing our identity as a broken pencil does not diminish our worth in God's eyes.
It simply magnifies His greatness. He can take you.
With all your lessons learned,
Your knowledge gained.
Your relationships built.
He can take all of that and sharpen it.
There will be tears and frustration and difficulty, but oh, will there be celebration and joy and fulfillment.
Let him write your romance,
your career.
Your family.
your friendships.
Let Him change the narrative.
Let him author those dramatic twists that might offend you for a while, but will send the story in a thrilling and fulfilling new direction.
And with the psalmist, you can sing these words to the author.
I trust in your unfailing love.
My heart rejoices in your salvation,
I will sing the Lord's praise.
for he has been good to me.
And so we go from graduation to the other important part of today, to Mother's Day, and the stories from there.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Mother's Day and congratulations to all our graduates. I have a story for you guys today. I was at a funeral the other day. Yeah, I'm starting that way, but I promise it'll get better. Anyway, it was for the mother of someone I work with. I wanted to be there to support my coworker. I know what it's like to lose a parent. I did the sign-in, the small talk, looked at pictures, looked at my watch, more pictures, more watch. I then found a seat in the back when the service started so I could make a quick escape when it was all over. We sang a few hymns and I settled in for the message from the family pastor. Honestly, I expected much less than what I got. The pastor read the whole obituary and then said something unexpected. He said, "That was well written, but I realize now that there's much more to discover as we read between the lines." He then told stories and that he had heard from the families about the departed one. And with each story, he held up an object. For example, the woman being remembered had a funny story about a mishap on a plane. As he told the story, he held up a toy jet. When he was done, he handed the toy to a family member. He did that same kind of thing several more times, using an object to connect with the story. Some of the stories were funny, as were the objects, but some were serious and heartfelt. And it was, well, extraordinary. A real legacy of love. And it got me thinking, what objects would reflect my legacy, as a mom in particular? A smooth stone. My Jacob brought this home from VBS one summer. They had told the kids the story of David and Goliath, and the stone symbolizes the stone David used to slay the giant. I remember Jacob coming home, and upon seeing his little brother, he yelled something like, "I smiteth thee, Goliath," and reared back with the stone. "I intercepted," said Stone, and sent our little David to bed without supper. Later on, I went upstairs and talked to Jacob. He said he wasn't actually going to throw the stone. It had given me a chance to remind him the point of the Bible after he had decided he was going to wait and find a slingshot. I told him that he can be a real-life David, trusting God to help him defeat the giants of life. His blank stares said volumes. And I told him he'd understand one day. Later that night, I hid anything that looked like slingshot-making material, just to be safe. One night, my husband Steve was telling a ghost story to the kids. He held up a flashlight underneath his chin and the throw of a shadow up on his face when he told the story. He had set up a white sheet and found some empty pop bottles to fill with BBs for sound effects. Even had Simba the cat under the laundry basket to release at the climax of the story. All of this in our lunch room. The kids gathered round, the lights went out, and the spooky journey started. Right at the moment he was going to shake the can and launch the cat, I burst in the room through the outside door, arms full of paperwork and a laptop. He had, of course, failed to tell me about his little theatrical performance. I tripped over the sheet, kicked the sound effect can, and knocked over the laundry basket, launching Simba into a perfect swan dive onto the kids' laps. Kids screaming, sheets flying, Simba screeching and scrambling out of the room.
husband still frozen in spooky storytelling position, watching his well-dissolved plan. After the last crash, we sat there, looking at each other in semi-shock. I hesitated, looked at the kids, and shouted, "Ta-da!" Everyone had a good laugh, even Mr. Scary. One year the church had a yard sale. We were supposed to bring gently used items. Well, all we had were harshly used items. So I was making a pile and found my Allison's old shirt that she wore to school like every day. I threw it on a pile and she walked into the room. It was like I was throwing away her prom dress. A fight ensued, we exchanged words, anger flared, and I made one of those speeches that you'll always regret, but can't take back. She ran out of the room, and I knew right away I had to make it right. I found her curled up in her bed, crying in a teenage pain. I let her weep and then cradled her in my arms. I apologized, knowing that my Christian walk, the walk I cherish and never want to tarnish, had been damaged by my actions. Or so I thought. She looked at me and brushed away the tears and said, "Thank you. That wasn't easy to apologize, but that's what you always taught us. It was nice." And her words trailed off. In case you're wondering, the church only made like $5 off that shirt. Finally, this. When my Jacob was really little, he made this at Sunday school on Easter, long ago. He brought it home so excited, and in his excitement, he dropped it and it broke in half. I swooped it up, grabbed some glue and glitter, and we both put it back together. If you look closely, it says, "Jesus lives." Honestly, first, when he brought it home, I thought it says Jesus liver. Jacob's crown work was really bad back then. He was so happy when we restored it, and he hugged on me for a long time. Anyway, I was Zooming with Jacob recently. He has a wife and moved out of town with their 3 kids, grandkids, my grandkids, but I'm not bitter. He told me his oldest had a broken hand playing dodgeball, and the other 2 were down with the flu, again. His wife was still looking for a job, and his job was exhausting him, and I could see it on his face. I did the obligatory mom thing, listening, then advice, listening, more advice. You know the drill. Then he asked me, out of the blue, if I still had this. Apparently his kids had made something similar at church, and it made him think of the one he made. Then he said, "Mom, do you remember telling me about the giants of life, trusting God?" It took me a moment, but then I connected. The smooth stone, David and the giant. "Yes," I said, "I remember." He said, "Honestly, the giants of life are getting pretty big right now. It got really bad the other night. Safe to say I wasn't handling the pressure too well. God seemed, well, vanquished at most." Then I saw one of those crosses the kids made, stuck on the fridge door. 2 simple words, "Jesus lives." And in that moment, I connected the dots. Your words remind me to trust God in all things, even in brokenness. Broken made new through his son, just trust. It helped me a lot, Mom, he said. I'm in a better place, and I continue to realize that I've always been in a better place because of you. Thanks for fixing, comforting, believing, and showing how big God can be by, well, just being you. It was getting late and we had to go. I thanked him, did the virtual hug, and moved on. The objects of our life, they tell stories of fixing, comforting, believing that our God is the biggest of all. Look around. See the people as they read between the lines of your life. A life that continues to create new and lasting legacies every single day. Thank you.
It is, kids did a great job of putting all of that together. I didn't have to do anything because they're really just that good. They, I think we had like, what, 2 rehearsals? Maybe? Yeah, 2 rehearsals. They are fun to work with. I know often we look at this day and we think that it is graduation Sunday and it's Mother's Day, and whoever makes the calendar really should think differently about all of this. But there is a connection to all of this in the stories that we tell, because rarely do we have 2 days all smashed together where we're all going to spend a lot of time telling stories at some point today. Whether stories of our kids in growing up, whether stories of our kids and what we hope they're going to be, or stories of our kids and their accomplishments and our hopes and prayers we have for the future. Throughout all of these stories, let us always remember that what takes us through each and every part of that the ups and the downs, the good times and the bad, is always where we look back to. Our faith in Christ, our faith in a God who loves us and walks with us, and who will watch over us through every chapter of every book that we are writing in our lives, and will always help us to find those objects that we need that trigger those memories in us so that we can look to the future.